Welcome to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast, the highly rated digital marketing podcast that provides weekly digital marketing tips and strategies from some of the world's top digital marketers and e-commerce entrepreneurs that will help you take your digital marketing to the next level. Sit back and enjoy this power-packed episode hosted by Arlen Robinson, who is an e-commerce entrepreneur and digital marketing expert with over 20 years of experience. Hey, e-commerce marketing podcast listener. Are you looking to increase traffic and sales to your website? You can do this by launching your own affiliate program. Just visit getosi.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's getosi.com. Now get ready to hear from your e-commerce marketing expert of the week as they drill down to give you details on marketing strategies that can help grow your business.
Welcome back to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast, everyone. My name is Arlen Robinson, and I am your host. And today we have a very special guest, David Perry, who is the CEO of Carro, which is a new e-commerce partnership network used by over 30,000 Shopify brands. Carro helps brands gain attention, sales, and new customers by partnering with brands in the network. Their goal is to keep customers on your store, adding all the things they need directly into your cart. Carro provides all the other products they want that you don't currently sell. Sony PlayStation actually acquired Perry's previous company, Gaikai, to establish leadership in the future of streaming video games from the cloud. This service is now called PlayStation Now. Welcome to the podcast, David.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. I'm excited to talk to you.
That Gaikai is a strange name for a company, right?
Yeah. I stumbled on that a little bit.
So one of the things that happens sometimes is when you have co-founders, they think they get attached to something, and so one of our co-founders loved Japanese words, and he really wanted to call the company Gaikai, and I didn't really like it. So, but it turned out I got invited to this muckety-muck branding event that was in Texas, where the Coca-Colas of this world spend a fortune to train their staff, and they sit around drinking glasses of wine and get trained in marketing. And so I got invited to this thing by a friend who was speaking at it, and I was sort of sitting at the back just listening, and they were talking about something called mystique marketing. Mystique marketing is when some of your audience feels very like they're insiders. And so an example would be the brand Versace. Some people will pronounce it Versace. And every time they hear somebody say Versace, they're like, they don't know how to pronounce it, right? And so this is mystique marketing, this idea of some people being insiders and some people not knowing. And so I came back and I said to my co-founder, let's go ahead and call it Gaikai. So it turned out everything that we did in the company, we put a Japanese name on. And then years later, Sony PlayStation comes along and buys our company, and it's a Japanese company. And they were so blown away that everything was Japanese.
Wow.
And they loved it. It turned out to be the perfect culture fit. So how weird is that a Japanese company would end up buying it? You can imagine, as they look through the names of our servers and everything was all Japanese. And
wow. So that's kind of
weird
like
how the world works.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a match made in heaven, I guess your business partner there was really kind of onto something.
Yeah, he really was. He really nailed it for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And we're excited to talk to you because today we're going to be talking about influencers and creators and celebrities, and really turning them from recommending products to actually becoming direct sellers of your products. And so it's really going to be a hot topic. I've had others on that we've talked about influencer marketing. I'm huge in influencer marketing, as my listeners know. As a co-founder of OSI Affiliate Software, we're big advocates on getting our customers and people and our e-commerce brands that are using our technology to go after influencers to become, the affiliates and the, advocates for their brand. And so you're going to be really kind of enlightening us on a different angle for that, getting them to become direct sellers. So I'm really excited to talk to you about that. But before we do get into all that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background and, how you really got into what you're doing today?
I'm actually originally from Northern Ireland, and you can't tell, when you're looking at me in a chair, but I'm 6'8" tall, and
Wow.
so everyone thinks I should have been like a professional basketball player, but basketball wasn't really a thing in Northern Ireland, so it's all rugby and things like that. So I ended up learning how to make video games, and that's what I did. And as a career, I got into video games. I literally left high school. I got a job while I was in high school, so I didn't even complete high school.
Okay.
And I ended up getting into the video game industry. And the video game industry was just, at the time, it felt like a fad. So my teachers thought I had lost my mind because it wasn't really a thing. It was just an interesting sort of entity that was growing. But boy, did I make the right choice. I strapped myself to a rocket ship, and the video game industry has become absolutely enormous. And so during that time, and actually being a programmer, what you realize in the video game industry is people tend to that you have to innovate or you're dead. Like if you're not making something new and interesting, no one cares. And so I think that mentality, I kind of laugh these days because here I am in e-commerce. What the heck am I doing in e-commerce, right? I should be over in the games business, but by bringing some video game people along and adding some incredible talent that we have, the net result is that, we have a team of people going, anything's possible. Like there's nothing needs to be done the way it's always been done. Where something might seem really hard in code, like we look at our data in 3D, for example. I have spinning 3D worlds with real-time I can see literally orders flying through the air. Why not, right? If you have the engineering talent, why wouldn't you do that? And so in reality, that's been a really fun transition. Even though the game industry is my background, this is clearly another space that enjoys innovation and enjoys people coming in and thinking new thoughts. But from the game space, where my career went was I found that working with brands was the most valuable thing. And so I would make these games, and I'd make some game like a game starring a character called Herbert, and who cares, right? Nobody cares. Then I made the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it goes straight to #1. And so then you go, well, I did Aladdin for Disney, the Matrix games for Warner Brothers at peak Matrix.
Right.
And so every time I got a license, my career just went crazy. And every time I tried to just go and make some random crazy little silly game, then it was harder. I did the Terminator for James Cameron. So like those different properties all really helped. And so coming into e-commerce, I'm sort of looking at the same way. What's going on in this space, and how does branding work within this space? And I think that's one of the things that influencers have in an abundance, is they have an enormous amount of attention. And when you actually really look under the covers in e-commerce, how important is attention to brands? I mean, have you ever met a brand that's like, please, no more attention. I don't want any more, no more, enough. We get so much traffic already, for God's sake. The last thing we want is more. Never. They can never, ever, ever have enough. And so much so that they pay Google and Facebook for every single click. Or they're doing, paying agencies a lot of money to try to drive this traffic in. And what really happens when you look at it from a network component, if you look at all of these different Shopify stores, some of them are in the same categories, like they're in makeup and they're in fashion, they're in sunglasses, and then they're buying the same clicks. So you get a whole cohort of stores buying the same clicks literally from these different services. It's very expensive. And now, I like to think about what keeps people awake at night. And one of them is that advertising efficiencies dropped like 15 to 20%. So where are you going to get another 15 to 20% back? Like, you're not going to get it if you unless you take action. So what is the action? And then also supply chain has become a problem. So you start to see more out of stock on stores. So what are you going to do about that? What other products can you put in your store today to sort of fill those gaps? So overall, it's kind of an interesting time. for e-commerce, but I think the one of the first things that we set out to do was to try to help brands work out which influencers like their products. And that's kind of an interesting question. Like, you've been trading for quite some time. You've hired an agency to go and sort of trouble people on Instagram to sell your products. But are you aware of which influencers actually like your brand? And so we put a lot of energy into trying to solve that. And we have a lot of influencers connected to our platform. And what we say to the brand is, look, this is your data, these are your customers, but if you just look at it under a different light, these are the people in your that have been really loyal customers that are actually really big on social media. And so you should be, I talked to one brand yesterday. They have 88,000 influencers in their data. I mean, you can imagine they nearly fall off their chair when they realize it. Now that's remarkable. Normally it's like 400 or or something like that. But it's like, that's more influencers than they'll ever need. It's an army, and they don't even know how to activate them. They've never had that before. They've never so now it becomes a question is, how do you work with these people? And so the brands then said to us, what can you do to help here? So what we did is we created a system. So again, our platform is Carro, but what we actually are doing is we're meeting multiple needs of a brand. So one is here, do you see all this latent attention that you're just missing out on? All these people love your brand and you're doing nothing with them. So you click a button and it says to the influencer, please stop buying our products. Here's a link, and from now on you can shop for free. And they're sending these out left and right. And this is so cool because the influencer's response is, oh my God, I love your brand. I've been buying it for years. This is so much more exciting to them because this is the makeup they're wearing. These are the things they actually use. This is not some candle company coming out of nowhere on Instagram saying, please tell everyone we make the best candles. They don't want to do that. But if it's the makeup they wear, then they're so happy to finally work directly with that company. And so what we do is we're now built into over 8,000 homepages to welcome the influencers on arrival, because they've used a special link. And it says, welcome, and you can add things to your cart, but we won't be asking you for a credit card. And so when today, what happens with influencer marketing is there's usually somebody on the team that is having to talk to the influencers, and the influencers are going to go to Coachella and they got like 48 hours and they need to choose a pair of sunglasses, and they're going back and forth, and effectively they're shopping through a human being to try to choose the glasses and get them into UPS. And in our situation, it's like, no, just let the influencer look at the store and let them be inspired and choose the things they want. And then what happens is the influencer makes the request, it appears in our dashboard, the brand clicks approve. Of course, they have to have final approval, but if they click approve, that order is placed directly into their Shopify queue and shipped out with everything else. So there's actually no literally we've got it down to one approval click. Wow. And that means that they can scale. So now you could actually work with a lot of influencers, and effectively you can sort of test the relationships. So if the influencer does a good job and you want to make them a brand ambassador or do some kind of deal with them, that's perfectly okay. Our platform is not, we don't even charge for this, by the way, so that's free to do this. But the idea is we want to help the brands grow. And so if they do this and they end up having a great relationship, then or they want to do some deal together, we are not an agency. So I have to be crystal clear. Carro is something you plug into your Shopify store, that we do everything we can to increase attention and sales, but we are not at all an agency in any shape, form, or size. So if you want to do deals or whatever, please do. But we are a very interesting way to discover that attention potential.
Yeah, good stuff. And thank you for sharing that background and what you guys do. It sounds like some awesome stuff, and very interesting how you made that shift from the video game world to the e-commerce world. But it was really interesting now because, like you said, video games these days they are huge. Bigger than ever. And I am maybe dating myself, but when I came up, video games, if I were to look at the game systems that were out in my day and then to what's out now, I mean, it's like night and day. I mean, we're talking like, I was looking at stick figures compared to
What
like,
was your first system? What was the first one you owned?
my first system was an Atari 5200.
There you go.
That dates me. Yeah, I didn't get the 2600. I think I wanted it, but something happened. We didn't end up getting it. I was bothering my parents and finally got the 5200, which I think was their next iteration. And I mean, just when I think about those games to what's out today, it's really amazing how far it's come.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
And the game industry has an insatiable desire for new hardware and new advancements. I used to laugh because Intel would come to our office with a backpack of secret new processors that are coming out, and they'd put them in our computers, and we would literally laugh because our game would that day push them to the limit. I don't care what they brought in our office; it was going to be pushed to the limit that day, and so we could never have enough. And that was, if you think about a computer today, it's most software like Microsoft Word or something like that, it's sitting there going, please type faster. I can handle millions of characters a second, and it's like the computers are so powerful, but we're not really using that power. And so that's the fun thing. That's why I love all this AI innovation, because finally it's starting to use the compute more. The game industry, the game industry pushes everything forward. So you'll find people working on the latest aspects of everything, even VR. One of my team members, after we were acquired by Sony, took his money and built Oculus VR, the VR company that was bought by Facebook. And now Facebook is leaning into the metaverse as being the future of everything, and that's driven by VR gaming.
Games, everything, like you said, has really been propelled by these games and this whole technology. So that definitely is so true. Now, one of the things you were mentioning when you're talking about what you guys do for Carro is with these influencers. Every e-commerce brand knows about influencers. Everyone wants to snag a big fish, so to speak, whether it's somebody high profile or maybe not even a high profile influencer, maybe just even a micro influencer, so they can leverage them. And the traditional model, as I mentioned at the outset of the episode, the traditional model is just getting these influencers to, just to recommend your brand in exchange for, commission. So if they recommend it, people go through to your site, make a purchase, they get a commission. Now, your model and what you're talking about is a little bit different, where you're getting these influencers to be direct sellers of the brand. Now, it's a little different model. Can you kind of enlighten us and tell us a little bit about, how does that work? How does the incentive work? And how do you really formulate that type of relationship?
Yeah, so initially, there are lots and lots of ways to work with influencers. The most common are some kind of link or a code or whatever you want to use, link in bio. It doesn't matter. But what happened was we had this incredible focus on attention, being how can we get more people to send traffic to you? And influencers are obviously, I think, the best for that. And if you work with influencers that love what you do, in our case, we've never had to pay an influencer anything yet. So with the amount of product that's gone out, we've never had to actually send cash along with it. Why? Because it's an authentic relationship. If you search Carro Facebook success story, you'll see that Facebook even wrote, it's called Meta now, but they wrote a success story on Carro because they like the authenticity of it. So that was the first piece. But then COVID hit. And we're like, attention is really important to brands, but what's more important is sales. So at the end of the day, attention is the driver of sales, but sales is the core. So what can we do as a company if we're going to build lots of different components for brands? What would change the sales dynamic? And what we did is we looked at our network of brands. We had 30,000 installs at that time, and we have 350 million visitors a month hitting those brands. So I started to look at it a bit like an organism. So if you can imagine all these brands together like a molecule, and the whole thing is getting 350 million visitors every month, then is there any way they can share those eyeballs between each other? And so that was our question. Like, we literally sat there and go, how do we get these people to share all of that attention? And and the answer came quite simple, which was, if someone's selling bicycles and someone else is selling helmets, can your bicycle store sell my helmets too? Because if you can put your helmets into their traffic at the bicycle store, you get that traffic for free. Now, wait a minute, that's a big deal, because you know what? That's even more attention. But ultimately, when that helmet sells on the bicycle store, that was a sale you were never going to get. You were never there before. You weren't going to get that sale. And now that sale, the way we work is we actually wire the two brands together so that that sale from the bike store is actually instantly transmitted back to the helmet company so they can supply it. Now, this matters because there's a fundamental issue that I see with wholesale today, is that a lot of people are buying inventory and putting it somewhere. Like they're buying inventory from over here. They're using freight, which is expensive, insurance, etc., and then renting warehouse space to store it somewhere else. So that stuff just moved, but nobody bought it. It's just being moved around, and that's a loss of margin. So is there any way to not move anything until it's sold? Like it's just gonna stay at the supplier until it sells. So we came up with this idea of wiring the actual supplier's inventory directly into the bike store. So what actually occurred is something very interesting, because today when you buy inventory for your warehouse, you want to keep you want to make sure it sells. So what you end up doing is you end up buying only a few colors and only a few sizes, because you don't want to be left with a warehouse sale to get rid of it all, or you don't want to have restocking fees when you send it back. So they end up limiting their choices that their audience is about to get. But if we can wire the actual helmet company directly into your store, you now get all the colors in all the sizes at no cost at all. So there's no inventory cost to place those products in your store. And if you sell something, again, what we do is the way our model works is, if the retailer sells something, so the bike company just sold a bike plus a helmet, that helmet, we transmit the actual wholesale cost of the helmet to the helmet company, and they ship it out through their own logistics system. So the user gets a bike in a box and a helmet in a box.
Gotcha.
And so that those are basically partnerships. And when you do that, you realize, why would you stop there? And so if you go, there's a website, statebicycle.com. If you go there, you'll see that they have helmets and gloves and socks and locks and all kinds of stuff, 10 different categories that are powered by us.
Yeah, so, it really just opens up these brands to just, a whole new audience, and they don't have to worry about really the logistics of, getting that increased inventory and, everything that goes into expanding their product offering. So it makes a lot of sense. Now, as far as the influencers come into play, how do they fit into the model where they're not recommending these stores or products and things, but they're becoming a direct seller? And how do you I'm a huge fan of Shark Tank, and people that are listening maybe catch the reference. How do you get them to wet their beak, so to speak, and entice them to be your advocate? What is it that you're doing to get them to become a direct seller?
Well, what happens is there's a conversation that happens with an influencer that's rather uncomfortable, and that is that about 99% or more of influencers in the world don't actually know who they influence. And so that they may have lots of followers, that's wonderful, but what actually matters to a brand is which ones buy e-bikes because you tell them to. That's actually what they want to know. Yeah. So then you go, well, how many of these influencers have customers? And the answer is, less than 1%. Okay, well, of the ones that do have customers, how are they doing? They're the biggest influencers in the world. Those are the Kim Kardashians and the Leo Messis and all the biggest superstars with hundreds of millions of followers. They all have worked this out. They all have multiple Shopify stores and brands and customers. And so what happens is, if you're serious about being an influencer, there's being an influencer and saying, hey, I got a great merch deal. And then you go, please tell me they're letting you keep the customers. Of course they're not. They take all their customers, right?
Yeah,
And you know, you're making you know, a few points on your merch, but someone else is growing like crazy thanks to you. And so that was really the question: is how can an influencer start to actually build their own customers and start to own a brand? And in doing so, what's kind of crazy is they become the retailer. So they've never even thought these thoughts like, wait, I'll be the retailer. Well, what is a retailer? Let's define a retailer. A retailer is someone who finds a customer and sells them something. That's what the influencer just did, right? They actually got them from not ever hearing about this thing to actually saying, here, let me buy it. So can we change that relationship between brands and influencers so that brands treat influencers to some extent with more respect as frontline retailers? And by doing that, the influencers start to build their own customer databases. And why does that matter? Well, if you want to remarket you know, as an influencer, you know, having that versus somebody else who goes, well, I sent all my clicks off to Amazon. You know, the typical prices, just so you know, so if Amazon actually publishes their rates. So if you send all your traffic to Amazon, which lots of influencers do, they're paying 3 to 5% for the categories that matter to influencers, and they keep all the customers. So in a typical scenario, as a retailer, you usually get, you know, anywhere usually around 30%, sometimes as much as 50%. It depends on the category of the product. It can be less if it's an e-bike, for example. But whatever the product category is, it's profoundly more than Amazon would ever pay you. And that's now your customer for life. And so, and these are very loyal people to influencers. So I just see a huge opportunity to start to sort of think about ways to help influencers become businesses in a way. But what we have to do is not make it hard for them. And today it's too hard. So
that's really what was just coming to mind, because a lot of these influencers, you know, they're just used to promoting brands. They don't care what happens on the back end. They just want, of course, to get their return. They want to get that percentage commission. So yes, how do you make it so easy for them to really open up their own storefront, so to speak, and all of that goes into that? Is it that's, I guess, what you have to make easy for them?
Yeah. So that's honestly, I would love to work with Shopify on that, because I think the opportunity that they have to grow is profound. But they have not made it easy for an influencer to have a store. And so what we do is we end up working with the influencers who have stores, and we will spend time trying to convince other influencers to build stores. But the opportunity space here, and again, I'm from the game industry. I'm looking at this going, what is going on here? Like, why is this structured the way it is? This is not optimal or even close to it, as far as all of these people engaging with each other. And so that's what we're doing, is we're trying to build the technology to make all of that possible. So let's say an influencer has a store today. We just did a watch on Summer Rae's site. She has like 26 million, I think, followers. Now we can bridge her store and the brand that she wants to work with without her ever touching the product at all. She has no interest. But what we're not doing is we're not some drop shipping company that's bringing things from China. What we're actually doing is putting real brands together, you know, and I think of influencers as brands. But that creates another fun conversation, which is this idea of, I think influencers need to become brands, but I also think brands need to become influencers. And I think brands don't understand that they already are influencers. They very commonly, I'll have a conversation with a brand, and it'll be like, we're in the spaghetti business. And it sounds good, but by saying that, you just massively limited the potential of your company. So, you know, then you say to them, well, what's your expansion plans in the future? Well, we're thinking of adding another flavor of spaghetti. And you're like, I get that. I understand that, but that's not who you really are. If you look at your website, you're showing me recipes that look fantastic with your spaghetti in them, but there's other ingredients too. And the place settings are gorgeous, and people, you can guarantee there's people looking at that table going, where do I get that cutlery? And we see that all the time with influencers. They'll be trying to sell a bag, and the comments are, wow, those are the coolest sunglasses. How do I get those sunglasses? They're like, I'm not trying to sell you the sunglasses right now, but that's the way the world works, is we can't help but go, those are great sunglasses. I love the knife and fork. How do I get these ingredients? I want the exact ingredients to make this. I don't want some weird version of it. And they end up going on Amazon and trying to find the components of something because they can't buy it from. So we keep saying to the brands, do you really, really want them to buy everything else they eat related to your product elsewhere? Like, you want them every time they buy your spaghetti to open a tab and start buying everything else. Like, what's the best pot to cook spaghetti in? Why isn't that? Just create another category and put in there the things you recommend. They're going to go somewhere else and do that. And so this is something that's a maturity thing with brands. Some of them really get that and understand that they have a bigger vision for who they are than just this one niche thing. But if you can't think of what it is, just look at your own pictures and and see what else. So invariably you see the helmet with the bike, and they don't sell the helmet with the bike.
What all is in your world, in the whole ecosystem of your product line? Now, the interesting question that I have now, though, is, with these brands and, when they're formulating these relationships with these influencers, and let's say you're going through the process and you're getting the influencers to really kind of set up shop, so to speak. How does it work when they're negotiating, negotiating what are they paying? Do you approach them where they're buying your product at bulk for almost like at wholesale rates, selling it directly? How exactly does that work? Because I know there's a lot of ways you can come into it.
Well, yeah, that's a great question, because I actually want to have a button for that says, I'd like to buy, hold on, there's a minimum order, size, and we have to negotiate restocking fees and all of that stuff. In reality, by doing it digitally, like the way we are, where we connect the supplier straight into the store, there is no contracts, there's no negotiation, none of it is necessary. But what does happen, which is kind of interesting, is we're almost like a dating site, where you have a brand that's the retailer with the traffic, and you've got the supplier who's making the product, and they want to work together, but they have to meet. And so effectively our platform lets them discover each other, and then this one can make a request to this one, or vice versa, and then they can approve. So it's just like a dating thing where they both have to opt in, and then they get to start doing business together. It actually creates the same problems as dating, meaning that in dating, some people on a dating platform are so incredibly popular that they actually want to leave the platform because it's so annoying that they have so much work to do to manage all of the inbounds, and people get upset with them. And so it's up to the dating platform to, in some clever way, keep that under control. And we do that on our platform, a bit like Instagram does with the verified, the blue check mark you can get on Instagram. We have something like that that puts the high quality brands together so they can do business without having too much noise. But ultimately, it's interesting. Just this is what's so fun about it when you're at the tip of the spear at something. Like, we are definitely at the tip of the spear of this industry, but it means you're getting up every day going, well, how would you solve that? Because that hasn't been solved yet, right? Like, how do we solve these things? And then we look for inspiration and how to do it. But ultimately, this idea of letting brands discover and work together is a core piece of what we do. But what we've actually found is that there's a bit of a CEO network out there, that they all seem to know each other. And so it's very common that a CEO of a brand already knows the heads of some of the other brands they really like. So there's a bit of I don't know where they're meeting each other or how they're doing that, but we've seen brands install on our platform and then have 10 other brands install shortly thereafter that they link directly to. So they've invited those brands in, and because if you think about it, if both sides have Carro installed, then they can both do business immediately. So if you know, we're another feature we've just added recently is upselling, because upselling is also a bit of a problem for current brands because they tend to try to upsell their own products. Imagine you're a coffee brand, and really all you have is coffee, and now it's checkout time. What are you going to do? Upsell more coffee? Like, hey, do you want coffee with your coffee? And so we're like, well, hold on. What are all the things that go with that from the network, not from your store, that we can add to your cart and that you can sell, and it will be your sale? And then we've realized if we do that with data and analytics, we can actually make a smarter guess than a brand can make by themselves. And so it might be common that someone's selling an electric toothbrush, but they have more electric stuff like electric shavers that they could try to upsell with their electric toothbrush. But the data shows that Kendall Jenner's toothpaste will get more add to carts than anything in their store. So as a brand owner, what do you want to do with that information? Do you want us to help you get more conversion, or do you want to just go ahead and keep showing them your products over and over? We had another thing that's kind of fun is if you can add any products to your store, why not create a pop-up store? It's Halloween's coming, or 4th of July's coming, or Valentine's Day's coming. Why not create a pop-up store, put a bunch of products in there that fit perfectly for that time of the year, and it won't cost you anything because they're all just partnerships. And when that date goes by, you can take it down. But in reality, your store feels fresh because you're actually merchandising well. You know what I mean? Like you're staying current, you're relevant. Oh, it's exciting. They have a whole bunch of stuff for Valentine's Day. Great.
And the power to that is, especially if you're, let's say, a seasonal business where you're only typically selling one time of the year, then if you incorporate all of these other holidays into it, products from all of these other holidays, that gives you kind of the full scope of the year to be able to sell products and fill in the gaps of those times where your business is slow. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it really sounds like, as far as the relationship forming, when you're getting these influencers to be these advocates and promote their brand, or empowering them to really kind of be the retailers, it really is just up to the brand and the influencer and whatever you negotiate. It doesn't sound like there's really like a boilerplate or a template for saying, okay, you got to offer them this, you got to sell them a bulk amount of your product at this price. So it really just, it's just you're starting with like a clean slate, and you just really kind of have to figure it out. I know it just really is going to depend on what you agree on, what they're going to be interested in, and what you're willing to do, and just kind of go from there, and then try to work it out between you two.
Well, because you're interested in the influencer space so much, let's get into some of the dirty little secrets about the influencer space. One of them is that if you force influencers to sign contracts and negotiate terms and control what they say, hold on a minute, these are content creators, and you're going to tell them how to create content? I can't tell you how many brands do. Like the vast majority of brands literally don't trust the influencer to even what they say. And it's like, okay, so are they billboards? Or are they influencers and / content creators? And the answer is they make way better, more compelling content than the brand does every single time. They have millions of followers and the brand doesn't, period. So the last thing you want is the brand trying to push them around, but the brands can't help themselves. So they just can't. And so they end up trying to force the influencer to do stupid things, that say things that they wouldn't say, and they restrict them. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do this. Literally, you wouldn't even believe what goes on behind the scenes. And so what happens is the minute the influencer is allowed to legally delete that post, they will delete it from their feed because they never wanted it there in the first place. So just to be clear, they take the money, they'll do the post, they hate it, and they'll delete the post the minute they can. Is that the relationship you want to have with your influencers? I can't understand why so many brands choose that relationship. It's ridiculous. And so the second thing that happens is quite commonly brands don't take time to test influencers and work with them and get to know them to understand why people follow them. And it's stunning how many just go, oh, she's pretty. I'll just have her sell my bikinis. And it's like that. Do you know why her followers are following her? They're mostly male and they don't buy bikinis. Right? And yet you see it all the time. They're so disappointed the sales didn't come through. The sales didn't come through because you didn't take your time to understand who follows this influencer, right? And the influencer will work with you if they really like your brand. And that's what we've been trying to do. And another piece that's not obvious is that the social networks, I'm not going to say they do this on purpose, but let's just say when you actually look behind the scenes at the data, the vast majority of their followers don't see your post. So what's actually occurring, and it's shocking, like the percentages are ridiculous. So what actually happens is if you want to be successful with influencers, you actually have to boost their posts. Why? Because you can imagine if you were building the platforms, why they would do that. If you and so this is a good thing, by the way, because what you can do is you can actually test the posts and see is it working, and then add some boost behind it. And if you do that, it's called whitelisting, but you can create relationships directly with the influencer, and then boost their posts. You'll see a huge uptick in the amount of people that start transacting because of it. And so, but see how you have to be careful. You have to engage the influencer the correct way. Don't treat them like a billboard. Understand their audience, test them, and then boost them. A lot of people just aren't doing that, and that's why your influencer program's not killing it.
For sure. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because that's really a big thing. It is, a lot of it is people get wowed by the follower counts, and they're thinking, okay, wow, I've got all of these followers, I can expose my brand to. But if you do a little more digging, like you said in the example of the bikini, majority of that particular influencers followers could be males, and so males are not buying bikinis typically, and so and unless you do that due diligence, you're never going to know, and you're going to be burning a lot of cash. As we get ready to wrap things up, one of the last things I wanted to ask you is, as far as where is all of this headed, where do you think this is headed? Because you've been around for a long time, and we're kind of on the cusp of this whole influencer marketing. It's really reached kind of a peak. And as you mentioned, we're kind of shifting now into this whole metaverse virtual world. Do you feel that the power of influencers really is going to get I guess you could say kind of a renewed strength in this world? Or how do you kind of see it when we kind of enter this whole metaverse, virtual world, so to speak?
I think authenticity is actually the answer. If they turn into walking adverts / walking billboards, I think it's actually, people are going to lose confidence in them. When you do surveys, you find that the trust is very important between the influencer and the follower. And so in the future, I think if they can do that, then it becomes actually a question of there's a concept that I think about a lot is moving people on the internet is a terrible idea. So every time you say, I'm just going to get these people over here to go over here on the internet, that's a terrible idea. That's a very, very painful and expensive process. And so I think what you have to do is always bring the transaction to where the people, that saying, fish where the fish are, is the same, is that concept. If people are shopping in social media, then bring the content to social media and let the actual transaction close there. Some brands just can't think that way. They just like, no, you have to leave social media and come to my store, and then we'll transact with you. And it's like, that's not the best way to transact with someone on social media. The metaverse is going to be even worse. You think I'm going to leave the metaverse to go to your store? Is that ever going to happen? The answer is never. So the transactions have to happen where they are. And the innovation, the people who are going to win are the people who think of ways to get transaction to happen easier and easier and easier and easier. So, you start asking yourself how effortless can it actually become. My last company was all about streaming video games from the cloud, because then you wouldn't need consoles anymore. And the fact that Sony bought our company is a bit of a signal. Is that part of the future or not? And so in reality, how easy could that make it? If you were watching a video on YouTube about a video game, you could just jump in and play that video game in YouTube, right? You should never leave YouTube. This game looks great. Can I play it? Oh, yes, I can. That's the future for streaming gaming. That kind of, unbelievable accessibility to be able to teleport into places with your friends. And so why would e-commerce be any different? Like, why wouldn't e-commerce just be, it was a quote actually from, I think, Bill Gates or someone from the past, business at the speed of thought. Excuse me. So business at the speed of thought is a really exciting concept for me, because that means you're actually starting with 0 clicks and working backwards. So for you to have to put a click, there should be a whole argument over why there has to be a click, right? And so it's just a very different way of thinking of just moving people around. It's like, no, I'll literally, what made Amazon so successful, I think, initially was this idea of one-click shopping. It was that patent turned out to be incredibly valuable for them. The idea that you could just click and we're done, the product's on the way. Right? How important was that? Very. And so I think that's the way, as long as the brands are saying to themselves, are we making this easier or are we making this harder? It's a very important discussion to have.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. That's really what it all has to come down to. The ease for that in the customer, and then, bringing what you're offering to them, and not vice versa, because that's just not the way to go. Well, yeah, this has been awesome, David. I've learned a lot, and I appreciate you coming on the podcast. A lot of golden nuggets, and I'm really excited about the future as we see this whole metaverse is really going to be interesting, where e-commerce is going to kind of meld into that. So I'm excited about that. But lastly, before we let you go, I always like to switch gears here. My last final question, just so our audience can get to know you a little bit better. If you don't mind sharing one closing fun fact about yourself that you think our listeners would be interested to know.
Well, for me personally, I believe in the concept of learning a little bit about everything, meaning it's actually something that I've found incredibly valuable in my life. And what it means is, if there's something, like let's say you choose photography or, I don't know, woodworking or whatever you're into, there are so many different subjects and everyone is interested in something. So have you ever played tennis? Have you ever gone water skiing? Have you ever snowboarded? Have you ever parachute jumped? Have you ever scuba dived? You need to. And why do you need to? Is because someday you're going to be sitting in a meeting with somebody who's really into that thing, and you will have immediate rapport with that individual wherever they are. And I have, I once was sitting on an airplane flight to New York, and there's a guy sitting next to me, and I'm like, I wonder what his thing is. And I start talking to him, and he's in the iron ore business. And I'm like, oh, well, that's it. This guy's got me. I have nothing. I don't have a single thing. I know nothing about the industry. And so, that was one of the first that ever really stumped me. And I noticed he was playing a little handheld game console, and he was playing tennis. And I go, oh, I see you're playing this game. And I know the people that made that game. And he goes, I invested in this game.
Oh, wow.
So I invested in the team that made this game. And so, boom, we're off we go, and we're having a conversation. And then he said, look, I'm going to go and see U2 tonight at Madison Square Garden. Would you like to join me? Turns out to be one of the most wealthy people ever. He had a whole row to himself at Madison Square Garden. It's just the two of us sitting in our row. And we got to enjoy, like, right over the stage, watching U2. And I'm sitting there watching U2 thinking to myself, if I hadn't have turned to him, I would not be here right now. And so how many opportunities are out there for people when you actually, but you have to have the ammo with you. So if he said I'm into water skiing, I'll have stuff to talk about. I have stories to tell. And so that I think is there's a quote which is something like learn a little everything about something about everything and everything about something. So and that basically means, in my case, that would be the video game industry, and maybe someday I'll fully grasp the e-commerce space, but learning a little bit about everything else, you'll find that people will actually respect you more when you care about what they do. So if you're working with an animator, but you actually care, you're not just like, go do that animation, which is the way they normally get treated, but you're kind of fascinated and you actually care, then you'll hear them saying, this guy really cares about the stuff that we're doing, and it creates a relationship. So that would be my thing in a very long-winded way, but hopefully that makes sense.
Definitely. And thank you for sharing that. It makes total sense. The more and more I interact with people, I see it. You have to really diversify, what you're into, things you're exposed to, because if you don't, you're going to encounter people and, they may be into something, you have no idea what that is. And then there's just really kind of no commonality. And so if you're able to diversify and take a genuine interest in a lot of different things, that really can open doors for you. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I really, really appreciate that. And David, before we let you go, if any of our listeners want to reach out to you and pick your brain anymore about e-commerce marketing, or anything under the sun, what's the best way for them to reach you?
I'm on Instagram. Sorry, not Instagram. I am on there, but actually that's more my photography. That's kind of pointless. LinkedIn, I'm D Perry. So if you search for DPERRY as one of the LinkedIn people, I'm there. To get our app, if you go to GetCarro, GetCarro.com. If you mention this podcast, so email hello@getcarro.com and tell them that you listen to this podcast, they will take really good care of you. You will get VIP concierge support. So please do that. If you have a Shopify store, please check this out and tell us what you think.
All right. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I definitely recommend all of our listeners to check that out. And, thank you again, David, for joining us today on the E-commerce Marketing Podcast.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know. Are you looking to take your digital marketing to the next level, but are tired of weeding through countless YouTube videos with unproven and untrusted marketing strategies? Well, we have the answer for you. The More Sales Every Month online digital marketing course. In this information-packed course, you will learn effective keyword research, link building, content marketing, and much more to attract and convert your site visitors into paying customers. Just go to moresaleseverymonth.com and sign up today for a low one-time fee. In addition to this power-packed course, if you would like to get access to a growing repository of digital marketing articles, PDFs, and ebooks, check out getosi.com/resources and opt in to get full access to our library of priceless marketing information to help you take your digital marketing to the next level.